Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive with us. Today we're going to be looking at January 8th. And as always, I'm joined by our expert to help us break down all the things that happened on this date. So
let's get into it.
Buckle up. We've got constitutional amendments, a rock and roll icon, a war on poverty, even a pogo stick record, all on this date.
Wow.
So let's jump right in. Our first stop is going to be January 8th, 1798. The 11th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution is ratified. Now, I know what you're thinking, constitutional law. Sounds boring, but trust me, this one's actually really important.
It is. So this amendment actually prevents lawsuits between states in federal court. And this was a direct response to a Supreme Court ruling that allowed citizens of one state to sue another state, which, as you can imagine, created a lot of tension and chaos.
Oh, yeah. Imagine the lawsuits. Can you imagine, like, California suing Texas for, BBQ being better or something?
Right. It would be a mess.
Yeah, exactly. So the 11th Amendment basically brought some order back to the judicial system. It's like a peace treaty, but instead of ending wars, it ended interstate lawsuits.
Exactly.
All right, so speaking of peace treaties, let's fast forward to January 8th, 1815, the Battle of New Orleans. This marks the end of the War of 1812, which, if you think about it, is kind of funny because it ended in 1815.
Yeah, it's a little confusing.
But can you give us a little background? What was the War of 1812 all about?
So the War of 1812 was mainly between the United States and Great Britain, and it was sparked by several different things, including British interference with American trade, and also the impressment of American sailors into the British Navy. The Battle of New Orleans was actually fought after the treaty. The Treaty of Ghent, which officially ended the war, was already signed, but the news traveled very slowly back then.
Wow. So they were fighting a battle even though the war was already over. Talk about mixed signals. I wonder if they at least celebrated with a drink afterwards.
Maybe. Or maybe they wanted something a little stronger. Because ironically, a few years later, on that very same date, January 8th, 1918, Mississippi became the first state to ratify the 18th Amendment.
Prohibition. What historical plot twist. From battling the British to banning booze, January 8th keeps us on our toes.
It does. And Prohibition had a huge impact on the country, both socially and economically. And while the intention was to reduce alcohol consumption and the problems that came with it, it actually ended up having a lot of unintended consequences.
Like what? What kind of consequences?
Well, for one thing, it fueled the rise of organized crime, with bootleggers and gangsters stepping in to supply the demand for illegal alcohol. And ironically, for certain demographics, alcohol consumption actually went up during Prohibition.
Wow. That's so interesting. It's a great example of how sometimes even well-intentioned laws backfire.
Exactly.
It really makes you wonder what those soldiers back in New Orleans would have thought about Prohibition. I bet they would prefer a celebratory drink after that battle. But hey, while some people were fighting battles or trying to outlaw alcohol, others were seeking peace. On that same day, January 8th, 1918, President Woodrow Wilson presented his 14 points for peace to Congress.
That's right.
Now, Wilson's 14 points. This was his grand vision for achieving lasting peace after the devastation of World War I.
Very ambitious plan.
It really was. And unfortunately, his vision didn't fully come to pass. The 14 points faced a lot of opposition, both here in the U.S. and internationally, and ultimately they fell short of their goal.
Sadly, that's true.
So it's like he was trying to hit a home run with all 14 points, but he ended up striking out.
Basically.
It's a reminder that achieving lasting peace is a lot harder than it sounds.
Absolutely.
All right, well, we've covered battles, booze, and peace treaties, all on January 8th. What else does this date have in store for us?
Well, in 1925, it was a day of both legal and scientific progress. On the one hand, we had...
Wait, let me guess. Another war.
Not this time. On January 8th, 1925, the first all-female state Supreme Court convened for a special session in Texas.
Whoa. That's incredible. 1925, that was a very different time. I can only imagine the reaction.
It was definitely groundbreaking.
What were some of the challenges that these women faced? And how did their presence on the court impact the legal landscape in Texas?
Well, they faced a lot of skepticism and prejudice, simply for being women, entering a field that was traditionally dominated by men, but they persevered, and their presence paved the way for other women to pursue careers in law and hold positions of power.
That's amazing. It's such an inspiring story of breaking barriers. But on that same day, another groundbreaking event happened. But this time in the world of science.
We're talking about A.C. Hardy, who patented the spectrophotometer on January 8th, 1925.
A spectrophotometer. Now, I'm not a scientist, so can you break that down for me? What is it and why is it important?
Sure. It's basically a device that analyzes light. It measures how much light passes through a substance at different wavelengths. And that information can tell us a lot about the substance itself, like its concentration, its chemical makeup, even its color.
So it's like a detective tool for light.
You could say that.
And what are some of the ways it's used?
It has applications in all sorts of fields: chemistry, biology, medicine, environmental science.
Wow. So from groundbreaking legal advancements to scientific innovation, January 8th, 1925 was a day of progress on multiple fronts. Now let's shift gears a bit to a date that'll get your toes tapping. January 8th, 1935.
The king was born. Elvis Presley entered the world.
Elvis. I'm curious, what's your favorite Elvis song?
Oh, that's a tough one. So many great songs. Love Me Tender, Hound Dog, Jailhouse Rock.
I'm getting flashbacks to my high school dances.
But here's a fact that might surprise you about the king. Back in 1946, young Elvis received a very modest birthday gift.
What was it? A guitar? A microphone?
Nope, just $8.
$8. Can you imagine if someone had told him then that he'd become the king of rock and roll?
It's hard to believe.
It really is. Speaking of humble beginnings leading to greatness, let's move to the world of sports. On January 8th, 1962.
A young Jack Nicklaus earned his first professional golf winnings.
Oh, wow. January 8th is a big day for golf, too.
Yeah, it was back in 1962.
Okay, so I gotta ask.
He earned a grand total of $33.50.
$33.50 for finishing 50th in the Los Angeles Open.
I spend more than that on coffee every week.
Yeah, it's a pretty stark contrast to the millions he went on to earn throughout his career.
It's amazing how even the greatest journeys start from humble beginnings. But speaking of journeys, let's talk about a really ambitious one. On January 8th, 1964, President Lyndon B. Johnson declared a war on poverty. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, yeah, that was a big moment in American history. Johnson's war on poverty was a whole set of social programs. They were aimed at addressing some of the root causes of poverty in America, like education, job opportunities, and
Healthcare?
It sounds like a really huge undertaking.
It was, and it's something that's still debated today. Some people think it made great strides in reducing poverty, and others point to its limitations and even some unintended consequences.
yeah, it's a really complex issue.
Yeah.
What do you think is like the most important takeaway from the war on poverty?
That's a great question. I think one of the most important things is that it really shifted the national conversation. It moved away from blaming individuals for being poor and towards addressing these systemic issues that contribute to poverty. It also led to the creation of programs like Head Start and Medicare, which still have a huge impact on millions of Americans.
That's a really good point. Okay, well, now that we've talked about some pretty serious stuff, let's lighten things up a bit. You know, January 8th is also a day for some more quirky events.
Oh, yeah. Are you talking about the Pogo Stick Marathon?
Yes. On January 8th, 1986, somebody set a world record for pogo stick jumping. And get this, they covered over 11 miles.
11.53 to be exact.
Wow. I can't even imagine.
The dedication.
The leg strength. My quads are hurting just thinking about it.
I bet he still missed his flight, though.
Probably.
Yeah.
Okay, so besides pogo stick marathons, what else is there to celebrate on January 8th?
Well, there are actually a bunch of fun national observances.
Oh, really?
Like National Career Coach Day for anyone looking for professional guidance.
Oh, that's fitting after hearing about Elvis and Jack Nicklaus.
Right.
What else?
There's National Winter Skin Relief Day.
Oh, yeah. Got to take care of that dry skin.
And if you're feeling productive, there's National Walk Off Your Desk Day.
I could definitely use that one.
And for all the foodies out there, it's National English Toffee Day.
Ooh, toffee sounds delicious.
And if you need to relax after all that cleaning and toffee eating, it's also National Bubble Bath Day.
Perfect.
And last but not least, it's National Argyle Day.
Argyle. Like the pattern.
Yep, the one and only.
I love it. It's like a choose your own adventure day. And of course, no deep dive into a date would be complete without a shout out to all the people celebrating their birthdays.
Of course.
So who are we celebrating today?
We've got a pretty diverse group. First up, we have Kim Jong-un turning 41 today.
What do you get the man who has everything?
Let's just send him some good vibes and hope for a peaceful celebration.
Okay, sounds good.
Next, we have reggae superstar Sean Paul turning 52.
Happy birthday, Sean Paul.
Then there's Mike Reno of Loverboy hitting the big 7-0. And finally, we have Bob Eubanks, the longtime host of the Newlywed Game, turning 87 today.
Wow, 87. You know, they say that couples on the Newlywed Game often discovered how much they didn't know about each other.
Yeah, it makes you wonder what those couples would say now if they played the game today.
Oh, totally.
Especially with all the social media and everything else we have now.
Right. It's like you really think you know someone, But then you find out they have this whole other online persona.
Oh, yeah.
But I guess in a way, that's just part of what makes relationships interesting, right?
Absolutely.
It's all about discovering those little quirks and differences.
And figuring out how to navigate them.
Well, on that note, I think we've come to the end of our deep dive into January 8th.
Wow, what a journey.
I know. It's amazing how much history can be packed into a single date.
From battles and constitutional amendments to the birth of rock and roll and even a pogo stick marathon.
And we even learned about a spectrophotometer.
Yeah, who knew?
It really makes you think about all the other events, big and small, that happened on this date throughout history.
And all the stories that we don't even know about.
Right. Like, what were people celebrating? What challenges were they facing?
Exactly.
It's a good reminder that history isn't just names and dates in a textbook.
It's about real people living their lives.
And facing real challenges and experiencing real joy.
And sometimes those stories intersect in the most unexpected ways.
That's what I love about these deep dives. We find these connections, these surprises, and suddenly history feels a little more alive.
A little more human.
Exactly. Well, we want to thank you for joining us on this journey through time.
We hope you learned something new and had some fun along the way.
And if you have any fascinating sources or dates you'd like us to explore in future deep dives, be sure to send them our way.
We're always looking for new adventures.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.